recording this. You're all very welcome. We're absolutely delighted to have our good friend from Guatemala, Margarita. And just to say a little bit about her, she has been a fabulous part of the Bard the last year, probably. She's a mix of Guatemalan and Irish, and I think the Bard has helped her discover some of the rich Irish heritage that's part of this wonderful actress and writer. And she's part of what she calls the poor theatre, which means that everyone is everything. It's a real Lou Savaldanak, man of many parts, because you have to be actress, writer, stagehand, promoter, etc. But she also describes, it's the poor theatre that they do. They don't have massive funds or massive state support, in no small part because she also describes herself as a political artist, which means that quite often you're not that popular with the people who have money to dispense, and you're not coming out with praise poetry all the time, which is one sure way of getting ongoing support. And last year we were delighted that her film La Llorona was nominated for the Golden Globes. Well, they weren't successful there, but they were very successful in winning a large number of awards around the world in the last for La Llorona. So Margarita, it's over to you, and we're absolutely delighted to have you. And off
Good
you
evening,
go.
Okay, just before
friends and fellow seekers, friends from the Bard, very dear to me. Please be welcome to my world. There is a geomagic relation I want to tell you about between Guatemala and Ireland, Mesoamerica and the Caribbean with Western Europe. But first, I will tell a bit about myself and about this wonderful, terrible place that is my home, Guatemala, Central America, Mesoamerica. The geomagic relation is my layperson's interpretation of the climate effects which originate in the hot winds blowing out of Africa over the South Atlantic, creating a warm ocean current which flows west and collides with South America, follows the northwestern slant of its profile, delivering the warm current into the Caribbean basin, limited on the west by a ribbon of land, which is Central America. This brief waistline of the American continent prevents the warm current from passing into the unimaginable vastness of the Great South Sea or Pacific Ocean. But we are here, we and our land, and the warm current collides and seeks its way northward, following the lines of the land until it is finally freed back into the same Atlantic it came from, although not the same. This is the North Atlantic, and now the current is heading east. On and on, not as warm now as it was at birth, but still some. It breaks at last on the beloved wild Atlantic shores of Western Ireland. Also Western Portugal, France, and Spain, but that's another story. And so instead of white and snowy, Ireland is green and rainy, as are we in Mesoamerica, also green and rainy, though warmer. Now for me, this is totally of mythological dimensions. Our loving great mother, the earth, in one of her kinder moments. Because there are those times when hurricanes batter us down and wash us out, 3 days of rain unceasing that make us think inevitably of the great waters of ancient story. Or the earth shakes and splits suddenly, or a sea of fire spews from a hole in a mountain, and the stars watch on, perhaps unmoved, but I don't think so. For they send us dreams in which stories are born and grow into explanations we can work with. There are stories here in Mesoamerica, stories of the first days and the first comings, of creation itself and the heroes that opened the ways of the world for generations to come. Not so many stories, sad to say, because an accident struck down this entire continent and turned its avenues of record and learning off towards alternate bearings, some, and many into the abyss and oblivion. But fire is fire and wind is wind everywhere. And like all peoples, they imagined and told stories of how we came to be and why rabbits and deer have such short little tails. It stands to reason that stories here and there sometimes touch and even run along brief stretches hand in hand until any bump in the landscape sends them off again on different paths that also eventually arrive at the same good place, the hungry hearts of generations, eager to rest a little while from the harsh tumbles of modern life, so often fruitless, and delve into the wisdom of the ancients, those who saw far in the clear airs of the world still young. I believe Cuchulainn sometimes encounters Hunhunachpu in the fair fields of the other world, that Danu and Ishmukane don't always agree on formulas, but share their curiosity, and that my beloved Mananan surely communes with Tepeu and Kupumats as they observe the efforts of their creatures to find their way back home. I, for one, am among these creatures, and may plainly say that the ancient stories have indeed steered me to places of reflection and points of reconnection to the greater meaning of life and the world and what we are doing or should be doing. Ireland is an old, old land, its Burren carved and shaped by the very glaciers, while Mesoamerica emerged from the ocean floor only a short while ago in the ages of the earth, and still spouts fire from half a dozen volcanoes that have given us this amazing rich soil in which all the seeds of the green world sprout happily and give fruits that could feed humanity, if not for the greed of the few powerful who have defied creation itself. These small countries one can walk across in a week or two, everything close enough to visit when we want, and the sea always at hand, rivers plentiful as well, and lakes. How not to feel at home, familiar? I stood on the bridge over the mouth of the Corrib in Galway, in love and wonder at the sight of sea and river arguing terms. Yet in my mind, instantly popped up the Rio Dulce, Sweet River, the estuary binding our largest lake, Izabal, to the glorious Caribe that gently bathes our eastern shores. No hurricanes there. Many sailing boats from as far away as Florida moor in the little harbor where the only bridge spans Rio Dulce and the highway goes on towards the northern lowlands where the classic Mayas once thrived. These small islands, blessed for perfect human habitation and given in generosity for all time, have not done so well under the patriarchal Judeo-Christian law of ruling the earth and taking advantage of its wealth, as opposed to cosmovisions like the Celt and the Maya, that even far from perfect, certainly took a very different view of how we little monkeys should relate to the ground we walk upon and that feeds us, as she feeds all her creatures, great and small. There is a brother and sisterhood we must pay attention to, a storytelling practice common to us all, I'm sure, but that I can definitely attest to in my myth dimension, where the tiger people and the Tuatha think nothing of the sea between them and traverse it when they wish. Now, I want to tell you how the natural course of Mesoamerican history ground to a sudden and terrible halt, broken and forever transformed into one of the great shames of humanity. When the first Europeans, not counting the Vikings some 5 centuries before, made land on a small island in the Caribbean, the resident Mesoamerican cultures were ascending in curves of splendor. All of them, both the islanders and those on the mainland and isthmus that are the Caribbean basin I spoke of before, that keeps the ocean current warm from the African desert from dissolving out into the Pacific Ocean. All these cultures were thriving and evolving. There were different forms of social organization, from wide-flung empires to coexisting city-states to tribes located on ancestral territories. They were nations of farmers and weavers and potters, artists and stargazers and mathematicians, merchants and travelers and scribes. There were kings and queens and priests, and yes, warriors. They had developed corn or maize, the base of their food, chocolate, avocados, tomatoes, many types of squash, beans, peppers of varying firepower, amaranth, prickly pear, many different tree fruits, some sweet and some sharp. They worshiped the heavenly bodies and the forces of nature, considered themselves children of their mother, the earth, and kept a strict and exact count of time, precise calendars with deep insight into the meanings of days. There have been some interested parties way back when, and still not long ago, who claimed the societies here had fallen into decadence. This is absolutely false and has long been discarded from serious research. Other claims included that the populace were not actually people, at least until they had been baptized, or that the true Mayas had disappeared mysteriously, having built and then abandoned their great stone cities in the jungles. One of the more colorful assertions was that they were actually extraterrestrial in origin, which goes hand in hand with sureties that they were the ancient lost tribes of biblical mention, or lost Greeks, or lost Phoenicians, or anything, rather than a legitimate people with history, identities, and developing processes of their own. Because how does one invade and murder and oppress a legitimate people? How can one seize their land and enslave them and erase their beliefs? So death and destruction came to this great continent aboard 3 little ships, followed later by thousands more. And the amount of wealth pillaged and taken back to Europe is so vast that in modern financial terms, there is not enough money circulating in the world to pay it back in fair restitution, with interests set at normal present figures. But I digress. The point is that the natural evolution of the worldview and the myths of most Mesoamerican cultures vanished into the fires of the Christian conversion. A very few literary works survived, 2 of them in my own Guatemala. One is a dance drama commemorating a victorious military outcome, and the other is our national book, although it belongs more precisely to the Maya Quiche nation. This wonderful work is called Popol Vuj, freely translatable as Book of the Council, and is composed of the origin myths on one hand, and then the history legend, which tells of the coming of the Quiche people. I would like to share with you the stories of how the world began and of all that happened before the creation of the people of corn. Even after 500 years, we of mixed blood and heritage still cannot but feel like grateful guests at best, because in spite of all the fire and sorrow, this land still belongs in trust to a living people. The lovely islands of the Caribbean suffered the impact of the European arrival. Its beautiful people hunted to extinction. Then the killers moved on to the mainland until nothing was left of its kingdoms and their cities, only the land and some slaves to work it. Few people survived. They embraced the Christian faith in name and learned enough of the language to understand the orders given. but in the bare refuge of their homes, they kept the language alive, and perhaps some memory of ancient times and gods and heroes.
In the Quiche language. So then Marguerite's going to translate it. And by the way, at the end, she's also going to explain the extraordinary costume that she's wearing and some of the costumes behind. But for now, a reading in the native language of the Popol Vuh.
Con el permiso de nuestras abuelas y abuelos, que nos dejaron el Popol Vuh para hacer memoria y para recordar de dónde venimos. Are utijoshikwae, kakatsininak, kakachamamok, katsinonik, kakasilanik, kakalolinik, katolonap uchupakaj, wa ekutunabetzij nabeuchan, mahabi ok, junwinak, junchikob, tkin, kash, tap, che, abaj, hul, siwan, kim, kichelaj, shap, utukel kahkolik, mawi, alaj wechuleo. Shautukel, remanik palo, upakaj, ronogel. Mahapi, nakila, kamulobik, kakotzobik, junta, kasilobik. Kumal kaantaj, kakotz, kaantaj pakaj. Shamakowi nakila, kolik yakalik, sharemanik ha.
Okay. So over to you, Marguerite, if you could, yeah.
Well, this is my friend Kike, who I hope will be joining us on the BARD one of these days. Right now, he's at Guadalajara, speaking about origin languages here, original languages. But he is such an enthusiastic and wonderful person, and he speaks English. So I said maybe we can have him in one day.
Mm.
And then he, at the beginning of this recording, he speaks a little piece in Spanish, which was his own invocation. Then I translated it, and then I'll go on to read the rest of what he was reading in Quiche is the full text, a couple of pages. Then what I'm going to read is a slightly more compact version, which I've been working on myself. But it still has I've tried to preserve all the literary wealth of the original text. So what he says is, grant us leave, O grandmothers and grandfathers who left for us the Popol Vuh, to create memory and to remember where we came from, where lie our origins. Grant us leave, O hallowed day, O energy gifted to us by our grandmothers and ancestors, O energy given us by the air flowing through our vocal cords. We come here then to remember through reading of the book by Dr. Luis Enrique Sam Colop, to evoke our memory, to remember. And now, welcome to the stories from the Popol Vuh, Book of the Council, which tell of the creation of the earth and all those who walk across its beautiful face. A word, though, about this ancient book. Its true text is not known outside the secret and ancient lineages of keepers of the word. But enough was told by a Quiche man converted to Christianity, acolyte to the Spanish priest Francisco Jimenez, and written down zealously by this priest, that these wondrous words survived the purge and found their way to us and to the generations. Scholars have studied the text, annotated it, refined the translation, and given context to the events and images appearing in it. I, too, have dared to suggest a new interpretation to one of the main characters, but not without the full support of Quiche scholars who have blessed me with their friendship, and more on this later. Now, in the beginning, the creation. There were only the heavens and the waters at first. So the creators, the shapers, who wrapped and cloaked their light in the green and blue feathers of the Quetzal bird, and whose names were Sakol, Bitol, Tepeu Cucumats, Alom, and Cajolom, gathered together, and to them came Ukushkach, the heart of heaven, who said, "The hour approaches for the sowing of the seed and the dawn. Let us then prepare the place for those who will name us and worship and care for us." They spoke the word, earth, and earth emerged from the waters. They named mountains and valleys and the courses of rivers. They named trees and vines and meadows, and all came into being. The mountains rose up, and they were covered at once by thick growth of trees. Only by the power of their word were these things done. Tepeucumats, the feathered serpent, was filled with joy and said to the heart of heaven, "Our work has gone well. It is good you came, Ukushkach, Kunrakang, Chipikakulha, Rashakakulha," speaking all the names. And then, having caused the face of the earth to emerge from the waters, part of heaven became also part of earth, one and the same. Ukushkach, Ukush Uleu. Then Alom and Cajolom thought of animals, guardians of the wild, children of the forest, four-legged creatures and birds and crawling things, all of which came into being, the deer and the birds. And to the deer they said, "These are your homes, the riverbank, the ravines, the grasslands, the forest. There you will grow and be many." To the birds, large and small, they said, "High in the trees, above the vines, you will make your nests, live and multiply." The animals obeyed and took their places. So their homes and nests were given to them by the begetter and the conceiver, creators and shapers, Alom and Cajolom. "So speak our names and invoke us," they told the deer and the birds and the puma and the jaguar and the serpent. "Give us thanks and worship us. Speak our names. Praise us. We, your mother creator, we, your father creator. Say now, Hunrakan Chipikakulha, Rashakakulha. Say, Ukushkach, Ukush Uleu. Say, Sakol, Bitol, Alom, Cajolom. But the animals answered only in screeches and cackles and howling. They had no clear language, and each cried out differently. This was not to their liking, the creators and shapers. "They have not spoken and said our names. This is not good. We will change their condition because they have not named us, their creators and shapers. You will live only in the farthest ravines, in the depths of the forest," they said to the animals, "and your flesh will be eaten, so be it. This shall be your destiny, because you have not named us, you have not invoked us." "Let us try again," they said, "for the time has come for the seeding and the dawn, and we must build those who will care for us and keep us, for if not, how will we be named and remembered in the world?" Our first works, our first creations could not honor and worship us. So we must make others who will respect and obey and be our children, love us, care for us, and speak our names. Thus began the first attempt at making people, and they shaped them from mud, from clay. The mud people had no strength in them. They were runny and crumbled and melted. They could not hold themselves upright or turn their heads, their faces to one side and unmoving, their eyes fixed. They spoke only a few words and melted in water. Not yet, said the creators and shapers to themselves. Let us take counsel, so be it. These will never walk or become many, so be it. We must think again. And they unmade then their work, their creation. What shall we do then, they said, so that our invokers, our adorers come to be? We best call on Ishpiakok and Ishmukane, deity of the dawn, deity of the dusk, who count the days with seeds of the coral tree, the seers, grandam of the sun, grandam of the light, so called by the creator and the shaper. So said Hunrakan and the majestic feathered serpent to the seers and counters of days. Find and show us how we must make the created people, the people shaped and formed to keep and guard us, to call and remember us. Bring us your word, midwife grandam, ancient guide grandsire, Shpiakok and Ishmukane. Bring forth the time of the seeding, the hour of the dawn, when we are named and worshipped by the people made, the people shaped, the people of wood, the people created. Let it be done. And so it was ordered by the shaper and creator. Honor your name, deity of the dawn, deity of the dusk, twice conceiver, twice begetter, ancient mother, ancient father, with your precious stones, with your jewels, you the carvers, you the sculptors, you of the green face of the earth, you of the blue vault of heaven, masters of incense, master artisans, grandam of the sun, grandam of the clear light. Pass your palms over the grains of corn, over the seeds of the coral tree. Tell us, should we carve those faces, those mouths in wood? And in what wood? Speak now, bring forth the seeding and the dawn. And the seers answered then directly, yes, the wooden figures will be good, the people of wood who will speak and converse over the face of the earth. So be it, they said then, the shapers and creators, and at once the figures were made. The people of wood came to be, and they seemed human in their speech, human in their conversation. They were people who filled the earth with their sons and daughters, the people of wood. But they had no spirit, and they had no thought. They remembered not their creators, their shapers. They only walked and crawled and gave no thought to the heart of heaven, ukushkach. So they were judged. Only a trial, only an attempt at people who spoke at first, but their faces were drawn, their limbs unsolid. They were bloodless, pale, had no flesh moist or soft, hollowed cheeks like masks, stiff legs and hands, noisy their bodies, unfit to stand before the creator, the shaper, who gave life, who gave the heart. But they were many and plenty, the people of wood on the face of the earth. They were annihilated then, all the people of wood. They were destroyed and disappeared. Ukushkach, the heart of heaven, sent forth from his thought a great flood, which fell upon the bodies of the people of wood, the men made from the coral tree by the creators and shapers, the women made from rattan by the will of the creators and shapers. But they were incompetent, and they spoke not before their creators, their shapers, who had made them and given them life. So they were annihilated, washed away. Burning resin fell from the sky. The burrower came and dug out their eyes. The bat of death that cuts off heads came and took theirs. The tigers came and tore their flesh. They ground and crushed the bones of the people of wood. Their bones were broken, their bones were shattered. They were punished for their worthlessness before their mother creator, their father creator, Ukushkach, the heart of heaven called Hunrakan. And darkness came over the face of the earth. Black rain fell all day and fell all night. Animals came, large ones and small. Sticks and stones cut their faces. Then spoke the clay jugs and pots and pans and dishes. Then spoke the grinding stones. All their tools and objects came forward. You hurt us much. You devoured us. Now you will be the ones devoured, said their dogs and turkeys. The grinding stones said, on our faces every day you would grind, day after day, at dusk and at daybreak, always shik, shik, hooch, hooch, on our faces. That was our work for you when you were still people. Now you will feel our strength. We will crush you and make dust of your bodies, said the grinding stones. Their dogs spoke then, and this they said, why did you not feed us? You threw us out, you sent us away. You kept a rod by your side when you ate to drive us off. We always feared you, we did not speak. We would have starved because of you. But how were you to know, being as you are worthless? We would have perished with you. Now you will know the fangs in our mouths. We will devour you, the dogs said, tearing into their faces. Then the clay pots and pans said, much pain you caused us. Our mouths are blackened, our faces are blackened. Always you set us on the fire. You would burn us because we felt no pain. Feel it now. We will burn you, said the pots, and tore at their faces. The stones from the hearth flung themselves at their heads and hurt them. Desperate, the people of wood ran about, trying to climb to safety on the roofs of their houses, but their houses collapsed. They tried to climb into the trees, but the trees threw them from their branches. They wanted to hide in caves, but the caves shut themselves before them. So was the destruction of the people formed, the people to discard, the people to change. They were wiped away, their mouths and faces broken. Some say now that monkeys are descended from the few who remained, their bodies made only from wood. The monkeys of the forest, who took the likeness of the people made, the people formed, who were only puppets, only people of wood.
So Margarita, you're going to talk a bit about the clothes that you have.
Yes.
And
Yes.
wearing.
Yes, this what I'm wearing right now is well, they're all special, but this is also this is an antique design. It's not, they don't make it anymore. This was told because I didn't know it. I didn't recognize it. And so I asked. And you see this same shape is on the shoulders also, but narrower. This one is wider. Well, it turns out that this is the symbol. Well, this is the sun around the collar. The head emerges from the sun. And these are the symbol of the shaking earth, of the earth that leaps up and breaks, the shakers of the mountains, which is one of the Titan figures in the next installment, when we can do that, is this figure that's represented here, right. A Titan, with the still same name, Cabracan.
Because there are a couple more generations, aren't there? And it ends up with the people of the corn.
Exactly. Yes, there's a whole story. There's a big story. This is just the beginning. There's a big story. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I would like to show you then, well, just two actually, because we don't have time. This, I don't want to over-inform. But you see this is a shawl from one of my great favorites, which is it's the people of the lake of Lake Atitlan, which is famous for its beauty and wonder. And this is it's a child's blouse, and you can see the little figures, which are mostly birds, because they are, well, birds are very important. In fact, the name, what they call themselves, their city or their country in the old times is Atzikinha, which means the house of birds. Because, and I've lived there, and I can tell you there are birds, incredible birds. And that's now. Imagine before when the forests were. Yeah. And well, then there's these are like the before ones. And then this is what happened later. You see, they're very different, but we're still talking about birds, like pheasant kind of birds. And what they're doing now is sort of a combination of the two, because like I said, these are living cultures. They're still evolving always. And their aesthetic expression is always evolving. And yeah, then there's another one. These are called Sutuhil. Their nation is called Sutuhil. And then there's another bird people also called Ishil. And they are big on hummingbirds. Can you see the hummingbird here? There's a hummingbird and there's a horse somewhere.
So, yeah, Margarita, it's absolutely brilliant. And I think we need another evening where you show us, when we have a bit more time, how through their amazing embroidery, they effectively kept their myths and rituals alive through this wonderful art, but also their identity, because I think what you're saying is each one of the separate tribes or peoples within Mesoamerica, they had their own identity. And while there's a lot of common ground around birds, there's a lot of separateness in terms of the different aesthetics and designs. So I think we'll have you again, Margarita, for another.
Thank you, Margarita. It was beautiful. I came across this poem today and it really struck me. But then as I was listening to you, Margarita, I just thought, wow, there's so much beauty in this poem. And again, it probably connects the two countries. So this is a coat by W.B. Yeats. I made my song a coat covered with embroideries out of old mythologies from heel to throat. But the fools caught it, wore it in the world's eyes as though they'd wrought it. Song, let them take it, for there's more enterprise in walking naked.
Well done. Fiona, your poem
wonderful. Thanks, Nadine.
Yeah, Nadine, that was fabulous. Fiona, your poem is also appropriate for the same reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's Sailing to Byzantium. It's one of his later poems. I don't know where I found it. Oh yeah, do you want me to read it?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. Okay. That is no country for old men, the young in one another's arms, birds in the trees, those dying generations at their song. The salmon falls, the mackerel crowded seas, fish, flesh or fowl, commend all summer long, whatever is begotten, born and dies. Caught in that sensual music, all neglect monuments of unaging intellect. An aged man is but a paltry thing, a tattered coat upon a stick, unless soul clap its hands and sing, and louder sing for every tatter in its mortal dress. Nor is there singing school, but studying monuments of its own magnificence, and therefore I have sailed the seas and come to the holy city of Byzantium. O sages standing in God's holy fire, as in the gold mosaic of a wall, come from the holy fire, burn in a jar, and be the singing masters of my soul. Consume my heart away, sick with desire and fastened to a dying animal, it knows not what it is, and gather me into the artifice of eternity. Once out of nature, I shall never take my bodily form from any natural thing, but such a form as a Grecian goldsmiths make, of hammered gold and gold enameling to keep a drowsy emperor awake, or set upon a golden bough to sing to lords and ladies of Byzantium of what is past or passing or to come.
Great. Well, Margarita.